In the dead of night, the forest ranger encountered disturbing strange events. During stormy night, there was suddenly a knock at the door. The man cautiously opened the door, just a crack to peer outside, and discovered a woman with soaked clothing standing there seeking help. However, this location was in the heart of the park, and every day when the park closed, they would check to ensure no one remained behind. There shouldn't be any visitors present at this time and place. Nevertheless, he ultimately let the woman into the house and handed her a towel to dry herself off. Faced with his suspicions, the woman explained her situation, claiming she had gone to play by the stream and had accidentally fallen asleep, thus missing her chance to leave the park. Upon hearing this, his wariness lessened somewhat, and he began boiling water. However, the woman requested that he drive her out of the forest, but he said his vehicle had recently broken down. The woman then suggested borrowing his phone to call for help, but he pulled out a stack of metal coins from his pocket, explaining that there were no phone devices here, and that he normally communicated with the outside world through coin-minus-operated phones within the park. This action only heightened the woman's anxiety. She immediately stood up, intending to leave this place as soon as possible, but the raging wind and rain outside made her hesitate. He appeared merely indifferent, with nothing else particularly strange about him, so she decided to stay temporarily and observe how things developed. Seeing the woman's somewhat unusual expression, he mistakenly thought she hadn't yet recovered and suggested she take a hot bath to ward off the cold. Her first instinct was to decline, but the wet chill on her body was indeed unbearable. Finally, she couldn't help but walk toward the bathroom. Upon entering, however, she discovered the door lock was broken and unusable. She had no choice but to turn on the faucet to create the illusion of bathing, then listen carefully for any unusual sounds from outside. However, he merely sat quietly in the outer room, which put her somewhat at ease as she began to clean herself. When she emerged from the bathroom, he had not only prepared clean clothes, but had also thoughtfully prepared soup to warm her body. However, when the soup was placed before her, she noticed it had a viscous texture that was quite off Mina's pudding. Already suspicious, she naturally wouldn't taste the soup and quietly poured it into her boot while he was washing the dishes. Just then, there was another knock at the door. He seemed quite surprised by this and cautiously opened the door to look outside. This time, however, there was no one outside. It was completely empty. The woman then witnessed him removing the door key. However, she hadn't heard any sounds from outside, leading her to suspect he was staging this scene with the intention of locking the door. At that moment, a series of crackling sounds came from the roof, and after the indoor lights flickered several times, they went completely dark. Fortunately, the woman's panic didn't last long as he produced a flashlight. Suddenly, after a whooshing sound, the roof began to shake violently. He immediately put on his coat and went outside. With his departure, the room was once again shrouded in darkness. At that moment, the woman suddenly glimpsed something glowing in the depths of the room. She hurried toward that direction with the flashlight and discovered the light source was actually a missed call displayed on a phone screen. But lying on the bed was a woman whose face was covered with fabric. Mustering her courage, the woman approached and lifted the covering cloth to look. Discovering that this woman's face was deathly pale, she had obviously been dead for quite some time.